to Emunah, Hebrew for faith belief. And today we're recording live in Caruthersville, Missouri, to bring 3 generations together to reflect on progress, pain, and perspective. We're pairing a trailblazer, Brenda Cooke Hundley, who integrated Caruthersville High School in 1964, with a recent 2025 graduate, Willie Campbell, to provide a compelling opportunity for storytelling, reflection, and insight. And between these two is Gerceida Jones, Dr. Gerceida Jones, who was one of 3 Black children chosen to integrate the elementary school at the same time that Brenda was going through the doors of the high school. Today, the 3 will chat about what has changed and what hasn't, and what faith and courage look like across generations. This is a story about being first, about holding the door open for those who come next, and about the hope we pass forward. Let's listen in. And I'd like for you to start, Brenda.
Well, first of all, a lot of people after I integrated to schools always used to say to me, I don't see how you did that by yourself. And what people don't seem to understand is initially I was not by myself. There were 4 of us who got together. My boyfriend at that time, Butch Nelson, my best friend at that time, Dorothy Anderson, and Dorothy and Cecil, who was Dorothy's boyfriend. We got together and we got to talking about Martin Luther King and everything that was going on and what can we do. And we decided we would integrate the schools. Now understand that we did not tell our parents. We did not. What we agreed to do was we listened on the radio for when the day that Caruthersville High School was having their initial registration. The 4 of us showed up at that school. There was a line of white kids in the line and we got in the line. And there was a lot of, when we got in the line, there was a lot of snickering and stuff going on. But we stayed in the line. And a couple of adult white people came out and saw us. We just still stood in the line. And finally, the principal of the school came out and he said, y'all are at the wrong place. We said, we are not at the wrong place. He said, y'all supposed to be at the color school. We said, no, we want to be at this school. So we stayed in line. We stayed in line. And then they pulled Butch, Cecil, and Dorothy out of the line. And they told them, and I don't know if they ever told their parents this, but they probably did. And they told them if they continued to try to register at the school, their parents would lose their jobs.
Oh my God.
Okay. And so I wanted to say this because I don't know if anyone knew this. Okay. They called my father over to the school. They pulled me out of line and they called my father.
And you have to explain to your father.
Oh, Dr. Cook. And we were sitting in the room. I never forget that the superintendent of school was trying to smoke a cigar, but he was shaking because he was nervous. And he said, Doc, your daughter don't need to go to school here. And he said, there's a color school for her. They're not registering right now, but they're going to be registering soon. And I don't know how many of you knew my father. He was from Kansas. He had grown up very poor. And he managed, because he was very smart, to go to medical school in California as a result of teachers who, when they asked my father what he was going to do when he graduated from college, he said, I want to open up a shoe shine shop and marry my high school sweetheart. And when my father told me that story, I said, but Daddy, if you had married your high school sweetheart, I wouldn't be here. Okay. So,
Can I finish the second part of that? So what happened was this teacher had asked he and his friend that question. That was my father said that he wanted to do, but his best friend said, when I finish high school, I want to be a doctor. And my father said he looked at this Negro and he said, if he can be a doctor, I can be a doctor. And they went to medical school together.
okay, back to school. So then my father sit there in the room with the principal, and he said, in those days, the NAACP, all the black organizations were very powerful. And there was nobody that wanted those organizations coming to their town. Okay, and my father said, I have been in touch with the NAACP. He named all the places he'd been in touch with. And he said, they are ready to come here if my daughter wants to go to this school. So they agreed that I could attend the school. Now, by the time they agreed I could attend the school, I didn't want to attend the school no more. Okay, because my boyfriend, my best friend, her boyfriend weren't going to be there. I was going to be by myself. But my father, my father said, you made this mess, you're going to finish it. Okay? That sounds like my father. And so for the first 2 weeks of going to school, the police carried me to school. They would pick me up in the morning. They would drop me off. They didn't care nothing about me, but they would pick me up, drop me off school. And I have pictures that I brought if anyone's interested in seeing them, because all the kids used to always stand out front. And, and then the police would bring me to school, and I would go just stand back because nobody was talking to me. But, I did it. So after 2 weeks, I was on my own. My only concern, and I have to say that if it wasn't for my father, I wouldn't have made it, because my father, every night when I came home, sit me down and said, you got to do well. You got to do this. You cannot act like a fool. He told me everything I couldn't do. And so I didn't. Now, my only concern was, and you guys have to tell me this, was I wanted to make sure I got my grades. Okay. Because, they could have said I wasn't turning in papers. They could have said a lot of stuff. But it's when I was getting my grades, I was making A's. Okay. I was okay with it. And my history teacher, I turned out being a history major. My history teacher was Mr. Rome. I don't know if Mr. Rome was still there when you got there. And Mr. Rome was this big fat white man who had his kids divided between girls here, boys here. And so when I came into class, he said, Miss Cook, you can sit there with the boys. Okay, and all the girls over there. And then one day in class, he asked for answers to questions. And every time he asked, I knew the answer. And I would raise my hand, and he wouldn't see. It was like he didn't see me. And he said, oh, since no one knows the answer. And then he'd go on to the next question. And finally, I must have had one of my daddy looks. He asked a question, and I raised my hand. And he said, oh, Miss Cook, and I answered it. Okay. But that whole time I was there, those are the kind of things I had to go through. So my only concern was, give me my grades. I don't care if you like me. I don't have to have no friends. I had friends. And I understood, once I got to that school, the meaning of separate but equal. Because at
Keep the mic.
School,
Keep the mic.
okay, at Washington High School, all our books were raggedy. Sometimes we didn't have books. At Caruthersville High School, we got new books. And I was in the band because I played the clarinet. And every time, this is the one I really like. For whatever reason, I don't know to this day for what reason, our high school was picked to represent the state of Missouri at the Mardi Gras. Anyone remember that? No one remember that. Okay. Okay. And they called my father in and said, you know, Doc, you don't want Brenda going down south. Say, you know, it's too much stuff going on down south. And then we have to make special arrangements if Brenda goes down south. And my daddy again said, smoking a cigar, she's in the band, she's going. Okay. And so then they had to make special arrangements because that was in the middle of fighting and running and everything going on down south. But when I got to New Orleans, and the school sent us there, and they sent chaperones with us, parents from some of the kids that were in the band. But the parents didn't care nothing about me. So when I got to New Orleans, there were bands from all over the United States. And when I got there, I noticed that many of the bands had Black people in it. Okay, so we stayed in a barracks or something, and I was always late. They didn't know I was late because I was always mixing with the kids I met. And so that I made okay.
That's good.
Okay. So I was gonna say, and since I live in New York. I married a man from New York, and we've been living in New York now for about 40 years. And a few years ago, I got a long letter from a girl who is now a very famous artist. She's from Caruthersville. And she contacted me. She somehow found out about me. And she wrote me a letter and said, I was at Caruthersville High School when you integrated the schools. She said, I'm doing very well now. I'm a well-known artist. She said, would you please come to my show? And her shows were in Europe. um, so I went. Okay, but let me tell you, I just think of things randomly, but let me finish. As I said, my father was terrific. To this day, I thank my father. I asked Tamara where she was. I don't remember Tamara anywhere around when I was going through this. I asked where my mother was. It was my father. But one day, after I'd been there for a while, I was walking to my locker to get my books out of my locker, and I saw these white boys up around on either side of the lockers, and they were snickering and laughing. So I'm thinking to my mind, something's up. I don't know what's up, but something's up. I go to my locker, I open my locker, and there's a rat in my locker, a dead rat in my locker. I took my books, put them in my locker, didn't say a word, didn't scream, didn't close my locker, okay, and walked away. I never had another problem with any of them. They just stayed away from me. I learned how to play the clarinet, and we went to a lot of football games. I learned how to do all of that. I went to everything. I made the Honor Society. I brought all my pictures if anyone wants to see them. I made the Honor Society. I made every organization. I was in every organization at that school because my father said to me, "You have to be involved." I know I can't.
No,
You have to be
come
involved.
on.
So I was very busy. So I even went to the prom.
Oh.
And I didn't even want to go to the prom. Okay.
We'll have a conversation after everyone gets a chance to talk.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Dr.
Anyway, that's my
Jones.
experience at Caruthersville High School.
So, I didn't know about the experiment that you said you were part of until we were just talking, planning for this. So, share with us what happened to you in elementary school at the same time.
Okay. Yes, I went to Southside Elementary School. And so I did my first 3 years at Washington. And of course, that was a great foundation. And by the time I got to Southside Elementary, I was in the fourth grade. There were actually three of us that went to that school, Kathy Carter, myself, and Daryl Wurzel. And Daryl was in the 5th grade, and Kathy and I were in the 4th grade in the same class. But what they did was they separated us, and they put Kathy in another class. And I remember my experience initially there. I was having a very hard time just adjusting, so my grades weren't as high. I was probably a C student then. So then the teacher, and I'm trying to remember her name, it was an older white lady, and she said to me, and I can't repeat some of the words she said because they were curse words, but she said if I didn't get my A together, that I would be back out in the cotton fields picking cotton with the rest of those ends. So of course I was stunned. I'm the only black child in the class. So I go home and tell my grandmother. You all may remember Sophie Dixon and Katie, who ran the grill, right? And they carried guns, all right? That's also because they also carried a lot of money. But anyway, so I told my grandmother what happened to me that day. And obviously, she went up to school and she had a conversation with them. And I never had another problem after that. But I remember thinking to myself, okay, if this is what you think of me, because as I've heard many of you say, being at Washington, the teachers, they really cared. I had Mrs. Waller in the 1st grade, and she had a paddle called Red Johnny, right? And that paddle had holes in it, all right? So that when she swung it, there was no air resistance, and it would just land right on your bottom, right? And I remember I got hit by Red Johnny one time, and that was the last time. But my next teacher was Mrs. Lunderman, so I was really looking forward to seeing William here. She was so great in the 2nd grade that for the 3rd grade, I had a choice between her and another teacher. I stayed with Mrs. Lunderman for 2 years. And so I attribute my strong educational foundation to Washington, because once I realized what was going on at Southside Elementary, with the way the teachers were treating me, because like you said, they didn't care. They didn't have our best interests at heart, okay? They didn't care whether you came or went. So anyway, I studied very hard because I was determined to rise and shine. So by the time I got to the 6th grade, right before integration, I too was getting straight A's, and I was actually testing on an 11th grade level because I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this happen. And speaking of, you want me to speak of first?
Sure.
Okay. So I was the first black cheerleader. So Mamie, I guess I was following in your footsteps. I played in band, clarinet, so I guess I was following in your footsteps because, I had all of these great people around me, not just my classmates, but also either older people. They were inspirational to me. So then I went on to college and I majored in physical oceanography. And I found out that I was actually the first black woman to graduate from the College of Engineering in physical oceanography. And then I later found out I was the first to actually obtain that degree in the country. So, thank you. So what I've found out is that, even right now, back then, there were probably less than 1% of women in science and engineering. And even today, those numbers really have not changed. So God has put me on a mission. And now that I'm retired, I retired 12/31 of last year. I'm so happy. I can really focus on my astronomy program. It's an outreach program to underrepresented populations, not just Blacks, Hispanics, Asians. I'm open to anyone who wants to learn. And I just came from Chicago doing a workshop last week to the STAR community, young Black kids that are interested in robotics and science and engineering. So that's that's my story, and it's all attributed to Washington.
And so, Will, before you tell us your story, I wanted to know first, answer this, and then you can tell your story. How aware were you of the school's history, Washington School, especially around integration? I'm sorry, not Washington School, Caruthersville School. And, especially around integration, were you aware of the school's history when you entered?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay.
Um,
When did you enter?
What year did you start
uh,
Caruthersville?
I started school. It's a little bit now. I gotta think. I was 7 years old, so I'm trying to think. Maybe 2011.
So you started in the elementary school at Caruthersville.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
might have gone to Head Start or preschool. So yeah, I
Okay.
started in kindergarten. Yeah.
What was your experience like?
I mean, it was fun to me. I mean, I didn't go through none of the stuff that y'all went through. I mean, y'all paved the way for us to be able to go to school with all the other kids and stuff. So it was a fun experience, I could say. But like as I got older, schools got more fun and fun and fun and better. And I see we got way more opportunities, and we got like we get to do like more things than y'all did, like more than y'all did. And like listening to all these stories, it actually made me think like y'all been through a lot, and it's like we don't have a feeling of like how that felt to y'all. So yeah.
And what does diversity look like at Caruthersville School?
It's
When you graduated, you just
yeah, I
graduated
just
what
graduated.
month?
Yeah. So
What month
May in
of
May.
this year?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what was your graduation class like? How
Um,
many blacks? How many whites? How many?
it was it was half black and half white, and maybe it was one Mexican and one Filipino. Yeah. So it was like it was even. It was even. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else about your experience at Caruthersville?
My
Based on
experience.
what you've heard from these two.
Well, my experience at Caruthersville High School. I was in the band also. So
What did you
yeah,
play?
I played the. I started off with the tuba in 7th grade, and then my senior year, I transferred to the bass drum. So yeah, but like I never knew all this stuff about the Washington school, but I know last year we had went on a trip. 'Cause, I wanted to first of all I want to thank somebody. I don't know who it was, but they had donated some money to the Lincoln program last year for us to go to Atlanta. I don't know who it was, but I really thank y'all for that because we had a fundraiser, and then we didn't raise like enough money, but somebody stepped in, gave us a couple $1,000s to go on our trip. So, yeah, I don't know who that was, but thank y'all.
But didn't that whole notion of a trip start with the idea that you were not allowed to have a Black History
Yes,
program?
ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. So
So it's
can you talk about that? So you
okay.
tried to have a Black History program at Caruthersville High School.
Um so I wasn't the one that started it. It was two girls, and one of them graduated with me, and the other one graduated the year before in 2024. So basically it was like they didn't want us to have a program basically to show our black spirit, I guess. So I don't know. It felt weird because we got to do it every year, but then last year they didn't want us to have it, and I don't know why. So
Did you have it?
yeah, we had it. Yeah, we had it. We had it here, and yeah, we got to have it here.
at
The
the
library.
public
Yes,
library,
ma'am.
but you couldn't have it at
But
the school.
I think we did. Yeah, we still had it at the school because they let us because all the parents that came together and they had went to the school board and so they let us have it. So we did it. So we did it here and we did it at the high school.
Do you think it's unusual that even in this day, 2025, that the parents would have to go to the school board to have a Black History program in your school?
Yes, ma'am. Like
How do you describe that? What do you call that?
I don't. I mean, it's weird. It's weird to me.
It's weird, but
It's
what's
weird.
another word for weird?
Like it's just I don't know
Discrimination.
discrimination. Yeah, but it's like we get to do it every year, but then just one year they just feel like we shouldn't have to do it. But hey, but
Okay.
everybody enjoyed it, so hey.
Yeah, sure. Sure, Brenda. Go ahead.
So after I graduated, I remember when I graduated from Caruthersville High School, I remember dancing out the door saying, "And I'm never coming back, and I'm never coming back." And about, I think it was 10 years later, maybe a little less, that my father called me. By that time, my parents had moved from Missouri to Oklahoma. That was where he was from. And my father called me on the phone and he said, "Brenda, some kids from Caruthersville High School have been calling because they can't reach you. They didn't know how to reach me. So they had called, they knew where my father was. They called him and said, we're having a reunion and we'd like Brenda to come." Okay, so he said, "I thought I would tell you." And he said, "I think you should go." He said, but then he put my husband on the phone and he said, "I think Brenda should go to the reunion, but don't let her go down there by herself." So my husband and I came to the reunion, and the reunion was held at the country club. And I said, the only way I got into that country club is the way I got there. Because when the day of the affair, my husband and I were walking up, and the whole one side of the country club was glass. And there was white folks in every window as my husband and I walked up to the reunion. Once I got into reunion, they had name tags, like we have name tags. And the entire class that graduated with me lined up and apologized. They did. And someone said to me, "That's like, yeah, that was like a closure." And even before it happened, when my father said, "I think you should go," I was still hemming and hawing, and I got calls from people. He said, "You may not remember me. I was in class with you, blah, blah, blah." He said, "I now live in California." This one called, "I now live here. I now live there. Please come to the reunion." And I went. And like I said, they all lined up. And the day of the reunion, the principal, who had been the principal when I was there, was there. The principal danced with me. So that was like a closure for me.
And who put the rat in your in your do you want to not say?
I don't know who put the rat. I really don't know who put the
Okay.
rat in my locker.
Okay.
You know, it could have been anyone. I know one thing. I started coming, the Black folks here every few years were having reunions. And so I came to quite a few of those. And at one of the reunions, the mayor of Caruthersville, it was a woman. Anyone know who that woman was?
Sawyer.
Sayers, Diane.
Oh, say it.
Diane Sayers. And I was shocked to see she was the mayor of Caruthersville because she was the only white girl that called me nigger, that all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, she's the mayor of Caruthersville? And I said, all the kids left me alone. They just left me alone. They didn't bother me. But she called me names, did all kind of stuff. So I was very surprised. And then she had the nerve. She was at Washington School, had invited her to that reunion. And as the mayor of Caruthersville, she was there, and she made a speech and welcomed everybody back and blah 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 blah. And then she said, "Why is Brenda Cooke here? She didn't graduate from Washington. She graduated from Caruthersville High School." And I just looked at her like she lost her mind. Okay.
Okay, and I'd like to close this out with a question for Dr. Jones. What do you hope future generations remember or never forget about this part of our shared history?
When you say shared history, you mean this moment in time, right now,
Never forget from the past.
from the past? Well, the struggle. You know, too many of them have not had, just like he just said, you know, he had no idea what we had to go through in order to get where we are. And I think we did what we did so that we could hopefully make it better for future generations. And I think another thing that they really need to do is pay more attention to their history. And unfortunately now, with the removal of books from the classroom, and even some of the courses in college, you know, they don't want to teach African American studies and stuff like that, you know, in college now. So what we have to do is make sure that we pass this information on to our children the best way we can. And Black History Month is a wonderful thing, but we have to do it more often than just for a month.
Right.
But yeah, so the struggle, we can't forget where we came from.
Thank you. And thank you for being here for this special conversation. Brenda Hundley's bravery reminds us that faith is not just what we believe, it's what we do when we stand alone. Gerceida Jones, Dr. Jones, perseverance shows us the great heights we can climb with the will and tenacity, and of course with God on our side. And Will Campbell's story reminds us that every generation has its own battles to fight, doors to open, and dreams to carry forward. This is Simuna. Keep the faith, tell your story, and always remember, keep making a way for those who are coming behind you.